Good morning. How's it going, everyone? All right. Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us today at our presentation on NIT and Amazon, how Amazon is leveraging researcher-driven AI for hybrid quant and qual research. Today, we have Sarah Kling joining us from Amazon. She's a senior UX researcher on their devices team. Sarah, do you mind sharing a little bit more about your background and your role at Amazon?
Sure. Hi, everybody. So, as Anish said, I'm Sarah Kling from Amazon. I've been there a few years. Before that, I was at a company called Meta, some of you may have heard of. And I've been working on research in the devices organization since I started. The area my team focuses on and I focus on are research related to our Fire devices, so Fire TV, Fire tablet, and specifically on those devices, we work on research related to apps, games, and other types of content that we put on those devices. So I work with two different big cohorts in my research. One is their consumers globally who use our devices, and the other are developers who are outside of Amazon. We call them 3P developers or third party who develop all the apps, games, and other types of content that we have. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Well, Sarah, thanks so much for joining us today. And my name is Anish. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of NIT. For those of you hearing about NIT for the first time, we help you run agency quality quant and qual research at DIY cost and speed. Work with awesome partners like Sarah and the team at Amazon. Our partners use us primarily for three key reasons. The first one is to run quant and qual research in one data set. The second is to really take all that time-intensive aspects of research off your plate through AI, which we'll be talking a good amount about today. And the third is to just help you run more research. The end output on NIT is a top-line report that looks and feels like something that you would get from your internal team member or an agency partner. And we are big believers in the role of researchers in driving AI. So across every step of the way, we have an expert researcher helping you, and you have the ability to kind of drive and customize all of this as you run research on the NIT platform. So today we'll be talking a little bit more about our partnership with Amazon. And before we dive into that, Sarah, maybe it would be helpful to share a little bit more about your specific team at Amazon, the different stakeholders you work with, the different types of projects you guys have been running.
Yeah, happy to. So we're a very small team in a very large organization. And the way we're set up is there's four of us primarily focused on research, and then one very recent addition is research operations. And three of us are active researchers, including myself, where we're doing all the hands-on studies, focusing on many different stakeholders, and I'll talk about that in a second. And then we have a manager lead who's really in charge of leading us, and then we have a new operations person. I should mention too, research ops at Amazon, at least in our organization devices, is not centralized. So each team is responsible for doing their own operational work, which up until we had this extra person join us earlier this year, we were also handling, and that'll come into some of the discussion that Anish and I will have. So we were doing everything on the ground, work ourselves for research, as well as running the studies, doing the analysis, and then sharing insights with stakeholders and in strategy discussion. So it's a tall order. But our team itself, I mentioned earlier, we have two major cohorts that we support doing research on. One is our consumer cohort using our devices and apps and games, and the other are those developers. And so across our team of three researchers, we kind of divide and conquer. So I do a lot of consumer research myself with some developer-focused research, and then my two colleagues have a mix of domains they cover within that, and we have different areas of expertise I won't bore you with. But basically, we're doing mixed methods, so we're qual and quant across the board, so really are doing a lot. And then our stakeholder roles vary a lot. So we have those traditional stakeholders for UX research, like UX design, product management, product marketing, engineering. And then we also support business development, account management, because in our developer side of the house, we have lots of different developer sizes. So it can be everything from a single developer game studio or our single app they publish for kids' education, for example, all the way up to very large partners like Netflix and Hulu for streaming platforms. And so we have different teams that help manage those developers, and we provide a lot of research support across the board. So we cover a lot of ground with Lean Team. And like many teams in the world today, headcount is not forthcoming. So we're getting asked to do more, bigger strategic questions to answer, bigger insights, but we have the same number of resources available to us in terms of expert research forums. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like you've had your hands full these last couple quarters, and I think that really gives great context and sets the backdrop for how we started working together, right? So for context, we met Sarah about 9 months ago-ish now.
Give or
Yeah.
take, yeah.
And when
Close
we
enough.
first started, you guys were evaluating a couple different platforms to really lean into some key opportunities that you believe your team needs for 2025 with even more research demands coming on your plate, but as you mentioned, resources pretty much staying the same.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more about what those opportunities were?
Yeah, so because we're a relatively fixed resources, and we do work with external vendors, and we continue to do that. So we do extend our team capabilities with partnerships with key vendors. But what we really decided, especially last year, was that we needed to up our game in terms of our research toolkit, shall we say, especially with AI becoming so much more prevalent within both existing kind of tentpole research platforms, like where we use user testing, we use Qualtrics, but also then with newer platforms and newer offerings like Knit. And so last year we started an initiative to really figure out how to bring in newer tools that would extend the capabilities of our research team and also offload a lot of that lower level work that we were doing operationally to run our research, and so we could focus as researchers on the bigger questions, the analysis, and bringing those key insights to the people who need them for decision making. So that's a long-winded way of saying we started looking at vendors. And so last summer we ran a number of proof of concept studies with different vendors. Knit was one of them after we'd been introduced to them at at a qualitative conference, and we'll talk more about that, right, Anish? We were really interested in their capabilities and saw immediately potential value to extend our qualitative research capabilities, especially doing qual at scale. And so we wanted to put them in our POC. So last summer, we ran a couple proof of concept studies with both existing vendors, AI features, and new vendors who offered different types of AI integration that would extend our team. And we used one topic that was important to us related to streaming video, which we kind of do, if you've heard of that. And so we were able to get real research insights and kind of compare apples to apples, more or less, for the insights that we got. And we were really excited with the results of that proof of concept. So after doing the proof of concepts, we evaluated and were able to then make a case for budget to bring Knit on board starting in beginning of calendar year 2025. But I do want to mention that we have internal AI tools as well at Amazon. You've probably seen some news and heard the rumors and things and whatever. We use internal tools for productivity based on some of our AI models, so things like summarizing meetings or transcribing, things like that. And we're always challenged internally to make a business case for why we would need an external vendor or product or help with AI. And some of that is we want to keep our data in-house for obvious reasons. But a lot of it is we have tools, so we get the question constantly from legal and from our business owners, why would we need to pay money for someone else's tool? So making the case for Knit really came out of the results that we got from our proof of concept, because our internal tools are not purpose-built. And what we've discovered in working with them is how really critical it is to have research-forward tools and understanding research workflows and processes and expertise, not just having an AI model that can help you summarize data. So I hope that explains it.
No, absolutely. And I think that entire process, you guys are very thoughtful about like what aspects of the platform will really help us really take our research to the next level, and not only comparing it against your existing tools and other vendors, but like you said, your internal tools as well. So
Exactly.
what we'll talk about over the next couple of minutes now are what were some of those opportunities and how you guys are leveraging those opportunities in 25 and beyond, and how we're playing a small part in that as well. So the first one is, you spoke a little bit about this, Sarah, is like expanding your toolkit, your Quant and Qual capacity. Sarah alluded to this, but when we first chatted, we were primarily a Qual platform. We've been adding a lot of new features, so it can now help with a lot of the Quant aspects as well. Could you maybe share a little bit, just for context, like what what did your toolkit look like on the Qual side?
Sure.
And what were some of those gaps or areas you really wanted to lean into in the new year?
Yeah, so our toolkit prior to knit and some of the other ones we've onboarded because we've really rounded it out for 2025, but we'll talk about knit today. It was a lot of the tentpole. I would call them tentpole products. We have user testing for qualitative, the standard kind of tried and true qualitative. We have Qualtrics for surveys, which is an enterprise-wide tool that's used. So that's a gold standard for us for surveys at scale. And then we had a smattering of other tools in between that we would use for sometimes survey platforms, for managing customer panels that we would recruit for and go back to for ongoing customer research with verified customers, and a few other things in there that just helped us with sort of maybe spot types of research. But the biggest, and I think a lot of you can relate to this, the biggest kind of challenge with having different tools for different types of research is that the data lives within those tools. And so for us to do longitudinal or Qual plus Quant studies or strategic studies where we do surveys and design research and bring it all together in a story and insights, we were doing a lot of the heavy lifting ourselves as researchers to really, I'll say it, knit that data together. I wasn't paid to say that, but truly to sew it together. And so, of course, you can imagine the heavy lifting on the researcher to really bring the data in and figure out how to wet it together. And so looking at tools last year and even into this year, we were looking for platforms that at least would let us do more than one kind of research in a way that let us go through waves or doing Qual design research and then Qual at scale on that design research, which is one of the big use cases we started with for knit. And then we got really excited when we started to hear that knit was really, really building out their Quant roadmap, which wasn't on our radar until more recently. So the idea of having tools that will, on a quality level and efficiency level, let us bring in all our data for multiple types of studies and provide that AI help with heavy lifting and even analysis, makes us more effective as researchers, and we can focus on answering those big questions with the studies rather than just kind of trying to work through all the processes and bringing that data into a place where we can trust it.
Yeah, and I think one thing you said that was really interesting there is what is possible when Quant and Qual are in one data set,
Exactly.
what comes
Yeah.
out of that. Could you share an example or kind of how you guys are thinking about the impact of having both Quant and Qual in one data set, being able to run research that is a true hybrid of the two?
Yeah, I think one of the examples that we've been looking at, I'll give an example that I mentioned. I work with apps and games, and so on our Fire tablet devices, we have an app store, pretty standard, which has apps and games and Kindle books and stuff in it. And let's just imagine, for the sake of today's conversation, that we want to do a new version of that app store. We want to come up with the next generation of it. And so that involves a lot of strategic research, a lot of customer surveys, a lot of even marketplace surveys. Let's imagine that we want to extend our customer base and really serve people who aren't tablet customers yet. So we're really thinking big on it. So we might do some surveys at scale. We might talk to our customers in surveys. We might go gather data from the marketplace in the US and other locales where we sell and bring that in. But then we also do design concepting. So early concepting, early prototyping to get out there and just get some reactions to it. And in our process strategically, we'll bring all that back and tell a story about what we think that next generation could look like, and then the data backing it. And we're a very data-driven company, and I know a lot of companies say that these days, but we really are. And so if the data, that we need to have data to support our stories as one often should. And so in that case, in our old tool setup, shall we say, we would have a lot of different data from different studies and different systems that we would have to bring together to tell the story of what that next generation Fire tablet app store could be. But with a platform that has more end-to-end capabilities, we don't even have to think about bringing it all together. We can focus on how we're going to actually analyze the whole data set in new, interesting ways and ask different questions that we might have maybe not been able to ask or would have been so hard to get the answers to with our disparate tools and disparate data. So
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like what you're saying there is not only does it make the research faster, but then you're getting more unique and in some cases different and better insights as well from
definitely,
the Quant and Qual.
definitely different and better. Yeah.
So that kind of brings us to the next opportunity, right, which was accelerating speed to insights. And I think the way you guys are thinking about this is very unique, right? It's not just about getting insights faster to your stakeholders, but it's also doing it quickly and better. Can you talk a little bit more about some of the opportunities you see there, some of the challenges you've run into in the past there as well?
Yeah, it's interesting because as part of our exploration in the last, I would say, 2 years of how to extend our research team capabilities, we looked into doing some self-service research, or I call it semi-self-service, as we'd have oversight, but we would enable some of our key stakeholders like UX designers and product managers who are close to customers to do some self-service design studies or maybe run small surveys, and we'd provide them with templates and have office hours to guide them and things like that. And that was, we're not the only team that piloted it. There were other, we call them our cousin, I like to call them our cousin research teams, but we're close to adjacent researchers. We all tried different methods for this, and just the issue wasn't setting up the program or getting buy-in. We did get a little pushback from stakeholders who have day jobs, but they understand we're all tight for resources. But the bigger issue was the quality of output and the quality of the insights. And so what was happening is that even if they set the study up well, the interpretation of the insights without that expert researcher eye on it was not good and did not meet our internal quality bar. And so we quickly decided that that was not going to be the way to go, because for us to get to our quality bar for research insights, we would still have to come in and do a lot of manual work at the end. We might as well just run the study ourselves. So in that, we realized self-service or semi-self-service wasn't going to be an answer. And that's when, of course, AI has had its real uptick. And that's when we thought, well, maybe AI can do those things for us that self-service might.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that kind of brings up a really interesting topic here, which is one of the last things that we were talking about, which is like, well, what does the role of a researcher look like,
Yeah.
right? When you take all of these very time-intensive kind of things off of a researcher's plate, what does it free up their time to do? And you talked a little bit about what that looks like, but could you maybe share a little bit more on like the impact that you're seeing now that a lot of these kind of like research ops stuff is being taken care of by the AI?
Yeah, we're still kind of in that, oh my gosh, I can't believe it does this state. So for what it's worth, we're still in that process of getting like the full impact of what all of these newer questions or more explorations we can do. So it's a learning process every day, which has been really fun and really interesting. But basically, it frees us up to ask those bigger questions, or to knit data together, to bring in data across data sets. To, for example, one of my colleagues runs a brand tracker related to our developers that I mentioned. She runs 2 waves a year of the brand tracker using an external vendor who I'm sure you've heard of. And it's a very costly and very time-intensive brand tracker to run. It's a very niche audience as well to reach. That's part of the cost of it as well. And so, but she has multiple waves, and she's got several years of waves. And a lot of the work that she wants to be able to do is to go across different waves on different themes, especially as we evolve what we offer our developers, or we change things, or we do new initiatives as they change over each quarter, each year. And for her to do that right now, she's got output from a vendor, but she has to do everything manually. So she's in process of working with NIT on the new Quant features that are coming out to bring that data in and do the analysis across waves of our brand trackers, and to be able to ask bigger questions related to a lot of the work that we're doing for those developers that we just would have not been able to ask before. So now she's coming with new ideas for questions that we wouldn't have even considered. So there's an evolutionary process around, oh my gosh, not only do I know this and I can get this answer quickly now across these disparate studies, but now I can ask this other question that I just couldn't even have dreamed of before. So a lot of that's what we're in the process of getting really excited about and figuring out as we work with NIT on their platform.
Yeah, and even as an AI company, AI first company, we do not believe AI is going to ever be able to replace that kind of context, that kind of thinking that someone has working in a business or working in research. But what it can do a really good job of is taking care of some of those things that you were talking about, like helping uncover the story, or at least a first draft of that story, so that you can spend your time more on like, well, what do we do with these insights? What does this story mean, and what does this mean for our business?
Exactly, and I think that point, like being able to ask better questions, our stakeholders can ask better questions, we can help them get better answers, but we as researchers can be much more strategic in our work than we ever could before, and that's what we're extra excited about because we've wanted to be that. It's just been like with what time, right? With if you're busy just trying to get the report out for the question that was asked today, that's important for a decision that's going to be made tomorrow, then thinking of the bigger picture of connecting dots across studies, there's not time for that. It has to be extra. And so for us to really deliver the value to the business and to our customers, we want to be able to connect those dots, and that's a big part of it. So efficiently and at a quality level, of course.
Well, I think that's a very exciting vision for what our industry can look like here in the next couple of years, and a great way to wrap up today. Thank you so much for your time, Sarah.
Sure,
This is
my pleasure.
incredible. Thank you for walking us through all of this. If you guys want to learn more about KNIT, we have a big green booth right at the entrance. Please find us. We'd love to share a little bit more, and we can open up for questions in the last couple of minutes we have.
Is there a microphone for? Hi. Does someone?
So you mentioned AI within it. Is the AI, I assume, is just within that very particular data set and interpreting that? Is there a concern, I guess, when you're looking at that, that it doesn't go deep enough, or like what, or giving those right insights, or is it just, I think, is it just a starting point and you guys still going into the
Yeah, it can be all those things, but I think one of the things, and I think the KNIT team, if they're in here, can attest to this, is we constantly ask questions. Like we're working on the brand tracker discussion I mentioned earlier. Is a lot of the questions are, how will we know that this is the right insight? How will we know that this tracks back? And so in KNIT's platform, for example, they track back to everything. So we can go to the source data and the source of the insight, and we could review it or decide ourselves. But also the human aspect of what KNIT does, they have human eyes on their side that are research experts also looking it over. So we have a lot of different checkpoints in place just to make sure the insight isn't a hallucination, but also to be able to track back to the source data so we could really pinpoint where this is coming from, both Qual and Quant side of it. So great question, though. We're always asking that question, and we'll continue to, by the way.
And to your point on like how we think about it and how we've designed the platform, it really is, it's to serve as a first draft. Ideally that first draft can get you 80, 90% of the way there, but we never think it'll get you 100% of the way there because the AI will not be able to capture all the context Sarah has on, this stakeholder likes to think about it this way, and this is what I heard in this meeting the other day. That's exactly how we've designed it to be as well.
Yeah. Hi.
I'm Rob Rocco.
Hi, Rob.
Nice to meet you. Great presentation. You have a mix of people in this room, right? You've got corporate researchers, you've got agencies, and you've got tech platforms like ours that we mentioned, like KNIT. I'm wondering how you and others go about making the decision whether to hire an agency or work with a tech platform, or go through the process you went through to onboard KNIT and others. Just if we can get some context.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, and I think I mentioned earlier, we still are working with our research vendor partners. I think it depends a bit on the project. So if it's, for example, we're doing a lot of segmentation work this year in various marketplaces internationally, and we as a team, a small team, can't do that work on our own. So that's definitely a vendor decision process, and we have trusted vendors who are experts in that we collaborate, who know our business, who know businesses adjacent to us, and work with those teams, and we can bring them in. So that a lot of times it's size of project or initiative, level of business, context up known, and the kind of output and the length of the project. So like segmentation takes a while, right? But when we look at a vendor, we're looking at ongoing help. So for like a KNIT evaluation, when we did our proof of concept, we were saying, okay, these are the kinds of questions we think we're going to want. We know we get these a lot. We know we can run this type of study. If we get 5 extra studies a year like this, that's a win for us, right? And so that's where we start to look for maybe a platform or tooling where it's just this ongoing, repeated, supportable, and with AI now extending, our efficiency capabilities and quality. So I know it's vague, but I can give offline examples too. So.
And just a separate perspective there, like my hope for the industry is like 3-4 years from now, there's kind of a convergence, right? Like the market research firms are using a lot of AI tools, and the AI tech platforms like ours, also have a bunch of researchers on it. So like we're investing aggressively in our research team. We have a couple open roles. If you guys go on our website, check out. We're actively hiring. Need some awesome researchers on the team. But yeah, like I think that's what it's going to look like 3 to 5 years from now. And it's not going to be any different from how it is today, where like some people are really good at these things, others are really good because they've built the tech, the team, the infrastructure around it.
I see the convergence already happening.
Yeah.
And so we have a research team too. So
Yeah. And if you are a market research agency thinking about building AI tools, check us out first. We do partner with agencies directly as well.
Yeah. Other questions? Oh, over here.
Uploading and integrating multiple sources of data. Is that like a repository that you actually can tap into to like do concise? I'm just curious about that.
Anish, you want to explain how you guys handle that?
Yeah, so last year we launched a platform or a feature that. Okay, yeah, sorry. The question was around when you're looking at, I think you were talking about the tracker specifically. Yeah, any data source, like, doesn't it have like a repository or the ability to kind of pull all of your data into one place to analyze it? Hopefully that didn't butcher it too bad. But yeah, so last year we launched a new feature called Data Import, where you can now upload raw data from pretty much any format, as long as it's like CSV, Excel, it doesn't really matter. And so you can import it into NIT, use all of our tools and analysis tools to analyze the data. To Sarah's point, the end output there is a report. So in the case, Sarah, maybe you want to speak to this a little bit more, but for the brand tracker, they're uploading that data, they'll be getting that kind of like analysis done by the NIT platform. And then, yeah, one of our kind of goals for this year is like, when you have all that data across all those different projects, how do you start trending it? How do you look across different projects as well?
Other questions? Oh, yeah, hello.
Thank you for the presentation. And so you said that in this platform you use Quant and Qual at the same time. So I know like we don't really have a lot of time, but can you give us like certain like snapshots?
here you go.
Small snapshot of like how it is like in one platform, Qual and Quant is the same in the same platform, and then like how it makes your job easier.
Yeah, so to make sure I understand the question, are you asking about the Qual and Quant tools within the platform?
Oh no,
or?
the data. Because like Quant data and Qual data,
Right.
intrinsically they are different, and also the data processing itself is so different.
Right,
So,
right. Yeah, we're not mixing that together for processing. No, it's more that we can bring the Qual and Quant into a single platform and also then produce ideally a single report or a set of reports that are related, so that there's ways for us to like bring in that story, because we know we've got Qual, we've got Quant, and we're getting that assistance from the platform to really put that narrative together. Do you want to explain a little more, Anish?
So from a technical perspective, what we're doing is we're actually turning it into one data source. So, or having it be the exact same. No, you're good. So like for Qual, for example, what we do is we transcribe all the data, then we have like a thematic coding. So we can actually turn the Qual data to look and feel a lot like Quant. And so you can analyze the two together. So what Sarah's talking about when we knit these two together is we literally can cut the data from the Quant and the Qual, and it literally looks and feels like it's all Quant data at that point. And that's where you get these really powerful stories from it. So that like isn't possible unless you have that really powerful kind of AI engine behind it.
Yeah, and imagine that for those of you who've done thematic analysis and coded your own qualitative data manually or with a little bit of help from tools, it does it for you, and then it's doing it in a structured way and probably a less biased way, right? An unbiased way. So there's a lot of work that gets offloaded into the tool to do that kind of analysis and coding, where if we did that manually or old school spreadsheets and things like that, it's obviously a lot of heavy lifting. So.
Awesome. I think we have one more.
Yeah, I'm just curious about like Amazon's perspective with sharing their own data, like doing the data import and just sort of that synthesis. Did you have to go through a lot of hoops with your IT team to say we're going to
Yes.
be sharing? Okay, yeah. And is that sort of the future
It's
of?
PTSD for me when you
Yeah.
mention this.
Is that sort of the future though of these AI tools being built? We've got the vendor side generating data, and then of course Amazon has their own. it'd be great to synthesize, but I can also just see a lot of IT departments saying that's never going to happen. So curious about your
And legal, yeah. So
Legal.
I think for us, we have processes in-house already for evaluating how we store data with vendors, as I'm sure everyone does. But with this, there's extra guidance around AI models. And because we have our own internal AI models and productivity tools, every time we want to onboard any vendor that we have, especially with AI modeling now, like NIT, we have extra hoops we go through to show why we need to use them versus our stuff. So doing proof of concepts and really explaining in detail with a lot of input from the vendor in the process of being evaluated is important, and security gets involved, and it's a whole thing. But if we can make the business case and we can show the security guidelines are met, which NIT obviously meets and has been successful with multiple teams at Amazon, and every time we onboard them, they have to show that again. That's how it works. But we've been able to. But I think we're going to keep pushing the envelope, because as these tools evolve, as AI evolves, we are mixing data sets, and we do want to try to keep the data in-house as much as possible for obvious reasons. But the realistic world that we're in is we can't build enough tools in-house, even at Amazon, to do what we need to do for the business and the customers. And I think everybody's aware of that. We're just trying to figure out where the guardrails are. And that's, we tend on the side of extra security, which again, should make everyone feel better if you're a customer. But it's also onerous for us as researchers to really demonstrate the business case. So we're working on figuring out, as groups of researchers, not just our team, how to really streamline that story and show these vendors value. I don't know if that answers your question, but so. Okay.
All right.
We got the stop.
I think that's about it. Thank you all so much
All
for
right,
joining
thanks,
us today.
everyone.
Really
Thank you all.
appreciate it.